Well, thank you, Paige, and hello. It's great that we have a strong audience with us today from all over the country. I always look forward to webinar days. It's an opportunity to share some of our observations and perspectives that will hopefully help make community association life a little better or a little easier. It's great to see so many first-time webinar attendees here. You're in for a treat with our guest expert, Matt Sluicer, and hopefully the content will just be a big boost in helping you understand what's going on with respect to reserves. Well, you've all heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. For years, managers, attorneys, accountants, and reserve study professionals have been telling boards to get a reserve study and adequately fund their reserves. But looking across the country, the results, the majority of boards seem to nod their heads and say, you're right, we should do a better job of funding our reserves, and then go on to other things and not take the action that they need to take. So if they were a horse, you'd describe them as acting not very thirsty. So in today's webinar, Funding Reserves and What Happens When You Don't, we tackle the challenge of making the board thirsty. This is the outline we'll follow in today's program. An important question is, can we see the future? That's important to establish in order for anyone to care about planning ahead. Now, I believe we can all see the future, but since we have, as I said, a special guest with us today, Matt Sluicer from First Service Residential, let me turn the microphone right over to Matt here at the beginning so he can share from his perspective. Matt.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate you having me be a part of this program, and thank you to all the attendees. First off, from a large management company's perspective, life definitely runs smoother when you know what's coming, when you have a plan. And an example of that is, let's just say that you're going to dinner. Your dinner is in 20 minutes. You leave the house 20 minutes before the start time, and that could be great. It could go smoothly. But what if you have to stop for gas? What if you have to stop to pick up a gift for the hostess? Those are some things that could derail you. So just like in so many different areas of our life, things are much smoother when we have that plan and we can see the future. A perspective is very important. So we're all very comfortable and confident seeing things that are right in front of us, right? It's easy to see the things that are right in front of us. And in this example, like this tree may be small in comparison to what's behind it, but if it's right in front of you, that's what you're going to be focused on. Now, in this other example, that tree may be small in comparison to the forest that's behind it. That forest is much larger, but from the perspective, you're really looking at what's very close to you. The things that are maybe even more significant, but they're further away, you might not be able to see them with quite as much clarity as what's right in front of your nose. And you step back even further, maybe you realize that that forest ends at the base of a mountain range, right? And that mountain is even larger and more significant. But again, it is real and it's there, but your perspective, you still have that tree right in front of you. So there can be even larger, more significant items that are further out, but from that perspective, it's difficult to see. And really the point is that the distant things are there, they're real, they don't go away. When you're focusing on things that are up close, they're still there.
Thanks, Matt. That makes me think a lot about perspective. It's so easy to see the things that are right in front of you. Today is webinar day. That's my priority. And the things I have to do for tomorrow and future days are secondary. And that's so much how we tend to run our life. And those things in the future still occur. And I want to talk now and train this from perspective to who the person is, the skill that you bring to the table. So I believe I can see the future. And you talked about that with getting to a dinner on time. Before that dinner date, you knew if you're going to make it on time or if you're going to run late. And what we want to talk about here, let's start with someone who has an untrained eye. And that may be a board member, maybe a homeowner, but you can see, as you spoke about with the tree, you can see events pretty clearly in the present. You can see that the trim paint looks good, or if it's dry and flaky. You can see that the carpet is new or worn, or if the patio furniture looks inviting, or if it's got some broken straps and has seen better days. And that untrained eye then looks at some other things around the association, and they may not really know if that fence system or entry system is really okay, if it's new or aged. Their skill is in the near-term events, not in the events a few years away, a little farther out. That's just a matter of perspective. You can see that their opinions are a bit gray when it comes to mid-range issues. And then you take a step further back, and that untrained eye will probably not have any idea at all about the further things out, the elevator modernization, the major mechanicals like the boiler or chiller, the roof system. And their very honest answer is, how should I know? It's really not my problem. They're untrained for those kinds of things. But for someone who has an experienced eye, someone like a manager or someone with a construction background, they may see those same mid-range things and it may be obvious to them. They may know about those mid-range items and enough to know about the long-range items. They're near enough that they can say, I know that's knowable, and I know someone who can tell me what condition they're in. Okay, so their comfort range is in this middle range, and they can reach enough to see that this is just mildly gray. And then you can change to the perspective of the expert eye. Someone like a reserve estate professional like myself who looks at building elements on a regular basis. And even those long-range assets, those long-range projects are clear. From my perspective, I think no problem, I got this. So from my point of view, the role of the untrained eye is played by the board or the homeowner. And now, while their job might be to make all the decisions about the property, as a reserve estate professional, I just give counsel. Matt's role, he gives counsel, but it's the board who makes the decisions. Unfortunately, they need to make decisions about things that are not their strength, these mid-range and long-range ideas. The mid-range observations, commonly those are helped out and made well by managers. They see the properties on a regular basis. And what I want to suggest is the role of the long-range vision. That is someone like a reserve estate professional. It's our job to see and to make observations and make conclusions and recommendations about the things, even still far away.
Thanks, Robert. So let me pick up where you left off regarding the board's responsibilities. You had mentioned that their role was to make decisions, and I want to step back and talk about their purpose. Generally, we describe it as making decisions to protect, preserve, and enhance the physical and financial assets of the association. And of course, we don't expect them to be the experts in the various subjects or disciplines, but really they provide the oversight and they make the decisions that guide the association forward. So where does this come from? Well, it would be the governing documents. They would define the board's roles and responsibilities. And of course, the association needs oversight, it needs leadership, and that would be the board of directors. But I want to make it clear that the board's responsibility is to do their best, not always to be right. And if their decisions are ever challenged, they can launch a strong defense if they follow the business judgment rule process. So it's like a three-legged stool. It has three legs that it stands on. The first would be good faith. So sometimes called the duty of care. It's to make sure that you cared about the condition and well-being of the association and that you're acting in the best interest of the association, sometimes called the duty of loyalty, meaning that they made the challenging and courageous effort or decisions when the association needed someone to stand up for the needs of the association. As well, due diligence. So sometimes called the duty of inquiry. So that would be asking questions, due diligence, finding out what the next best step looks like. As well, the business judgment rule allows you to make decisions and move forward relatively safely, so long as you act without fear. So make sure that your decisions were documented in good faith. That's really key, having good documentation, that it's in the best interest of the association, and it was after doing your research and asking the appropriate amount of questions. So this is really an interesting cartoon. Why care? Well, without acting, the association could fall apart. Really the board's role is to protect, preserve, and enhance the association, not to let it deteriorate. So really, let me ask you all today, do you see that how different people with different skill sets can really see the future better as far as incorporating professionals to assist? And do you see that the boards have protections in place to help them act without fear? Would really like to hear your all thoughts on that. And please, if you have any questions or comments, put it into the chat there in the Q&A, and then we can address at the end of the program.
Thanks, Matt. And now I'm going to turn the corner and step in and talk about preparing for your mountains. An important question is, what are the challenges in front of me in our association? Is it just that tree? Is it the forest? Is it the mountains? How can I prepare for the things that I might not see clearly? Well, let me show you how that comes together. The future is coming at you faster than you can realize, but you can get help to prepare. Let's think about it like a trip, an airplane trip from San Francisco to New York. On the way, there are obstacles out there, big mountains, a lot of territory to cover. And those big mountains are very real. They're things you have to fly over, and it's all coming at you very fast. Your pilot needs to prepare in advance to gain the altitude necessary to cross that safely. And when I think about things coming at you fast, I think back to this comedy skit that was in the old I Love Lucy program with Lucy and Ethel working at the candy factory. If you haven't seen this short 5-minute clip of this comedy sketch, that's your homework assignment for the day. In fact, I'll put a link to the clip in the outline of this program. It's important to understand that the future is coming and you need to work hard to keep up. There's deterioration every day. And if you're not offsetting that current deterioration with a reserve plan, you are getting behind. And there's consequences to inaction or moving too slowly. And 5 minutes on YouTube is going to make this point a lot clearer than I ever could.
Thank you for that, Robert. Back to the trip. So really what's important is understanding that, as I mentioned, the board provides the oversight. They're really the captain or the pilot that's in the cockpit. They're not looking out the window or in the back talking with the passengers. And they're really having that oversight to make sure that that flight is a success. And just like a pilot has air traffic control as well, the board has professionals to support them. They have professional property managers, reserve study professionals. They're there really to support and be subject matter experts to facilitate, to ensure that the association is on track. Now, of course, it's unfortunate if we have boards that are not paying attention to their duties, that don't reach out for help, and the association crashes. In our community association world, we call that a special assessment. Everyone suffers, the flight crew, the board, all the passengers. And that happens really when the flight crew is not flying the plane and not exercising their duty of inquiry to get counsel from air traffic control.
Matt, let me insert myself for a few minutes here and we'll talk about real mountains. These are going to be some slides I show showing the expenses, the reserve expenses over the years for different clients. And these are actual excerpts from reserve studies. So different to mountains. You can see in this one, they've got an early mountain in the second year, maybe about 10 years out and 29 years out. That's their profile. That's very different from this profile where they have a profound big expense, again, about 8 years out. This might be a plan development or a HOA where they have a huge asphalt project, something that tends to stand out. Or it may be this property where they have that huge, same kind of profile, but all of a sudden that's happening in the second year. They have almost no time to prepare. They need to be sitting on a reserve fund that is basically ready at this time, the year that they get the reserve study, for this big expense. They don't have enough time, don't have enough years to get ready. Or it may be something like this, where every year has a significant reserve expense. They've got some big ones here, and then a loading of 4 big ones in the 20 plus year time frame. I'm not sure exactly what that could be. That could be siding or windows, or it could be something like this, where it almost looks noisy to me with so many years of so many expenses, so many things going on. You get a little bit of an opportunity to take a break here, take a breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 years, you can begin to prepare for the next year, but otherwise they've got to be ready. on this property here, number of significant expenses. Big years, no years. Big years, almost no years. Got a few years. It's going to be challenging for board members in these years right here because they don't want to get lulled into complacency. They've got huge expenses around the corner. As soon as you get done with this one, you've pretty much got to be getting ready for this one here, here, and here. So different set of mountains. And look at this next one I'm going to show you, where there's a lot of kind of empty space in between. So big expenses every few years, kind of a regular pattern here, probably every 10 years on the medium expenses, every 10 years with the large expenses. Just a different set of challenges that these different boards have. And what about this association? It's pretty constant year after year after year after year. You could say that they have pretty much 100,000 plus in reserve expenses every year. So just get dialed up and ready to go. But you need to know your upcoming mountains and how that will make a difference for your plan and the action that you need to be able to take. So every board, every year needs to be understanding what are the challenges that they need to fly over. And remember, they're approaching fast. We can't do anything about Father Time. So Father Time's not going to stop and wait for you to get ready. Boards need their hands on the controls. I'm right here. I'm grabbing onto the control yoke on an airplane, and they need counsel from air traffic control to navigate successfully to the future. And what I want to encourage you to think is that you now see that the mountain ranges are very real. They're very big. Every association has a different set, and that you as a flight crew need to be paying attention and navigating ahead through your own particular set of challenges. And as Matt said a moment ago, if you have any particular questions, by all means, jot them down in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the program. But let's move on to the next section here, how we can help you learn about your vision for seeing and preparing. And we believe it helps if you can relate to your own experience, like thinking about how long it takes or used to take for your daily commute or errands. Now, Matt's going to challenge you for a few minutes about how you can clearly see and prepare for the future, and he'll set you up with appropriate expectations.
Thank you, Robert. So let's go back to where we started at the mid-rise condo building. And we talked about that a person with an inexperienced eye, typically the board or homeowner, they can clearly see the near-term projects, things like trim paint, carpet, pool furniture. And now let's think about it like going to the eye doctor and getting your vision checked. So the very large letters at the top, that's the near-term projects. Those are the items that the inexperienced eye can see clearly. So commonly obvious, easy to see, no special skill really needed. There's a high confidence that those need to be done. And then as we go into more of the mid-range projects, things get a bit more fuzzy, and the long-range projects usually are too small or distant to really see. Now, for the mid-range projects, those are a few years out into the future, and they're really going to require some experience to spot the differences from new and know the implications of showing some wear and age. Really, to spot the mid-range projects, you need some discernment above what's considered plainly obvious. And lastly, we have the long-range projects. So these are projects that are really going to take some special skill or experience. But with those that have that skill or experience, that trained person can make good estimates on those long-range projects. So how's my vision? We grant that everyone has a different ability to see things. Some of us need corrective lenses. We do that because we want to see where we're walking, what we're reading, or where we're driving. Just like an airplane flying across the country, those expense mountains are approaching very quickly without pause. And because we're traveling fast, those mid-range projects are going to come up on us before we know it. So really, you're going to see that as the fence begins to lean or the entry system is going to break down periodically, those are signs that the mid-range projects are getting closer. And the same is true for the long-range projects. If you wait until those large distant projects become near-term projects, it's really too late. They've arrived. When the roof's leaking, it's too late to prepare. You have a crisis on your hands. And the bottom line, the point I want to make is that the mountains are there. even if you can't see them immediately. And someone with the right corrective lens or background or experience can see them. And that mountain range of expenses keeps getting closer every day, and there's nothing that you can really do to stop them. I'm sure some of you have heard this, that coal miners a long time ago, unfortunately, some miners would die from carbon monoxide poisoning deep inside the mines. And what they've learned is that canaries were especially sensitive to carbon monoxide. And what they would do is they would bring the canary down with them as an early warning alarm, right? So when the canary stopped singing, the miners knew they were in danger. They needed to get out quickly. They found a tool to help them see the future more clearly than they could see it themselves. So remember on this trip, although you're the pilot and you're looking forward and providing that oversight, you're not alone. So definitely use your team, use the resources that are at your disposal to see what's ahead of you. Use your own early warning systems. I hope that you all now understand that we all see things differently. We all have different skill sets. Hopefully you're comfortable that we've set things up in this industry with professionals standing by like air traffic control to really help boards become successful in navigating this course. And again, I'd love to hear your feedback. So if you have any questions or thoughts, please go ahead and enter that into the Q&A section, and we'll address that at the end of the program.
Thanks, Matt. Okay. Well, what do you see when there's a failure to plan ahead? Besides a special assessment, of course, and many of our audience here have experienced, unfortunately, a special assessment in the real recent past, 0 to 2 years. What if the board does plan ahead? And from your body of experience at First Service Residential, tell our audience today what you see when the board is unprepared or when they do prepare.
Yeah, great question, Robert. So first, let's start with what happens if you're not prepared. We've talked about those mountains of expenses in your associations, they are coming. And a classic image that I think about is Alfred Newman. You know, many of you may have seen this mascot of the old Mad magazine. And his famous phrase was, "What? Me worry?" It's funny because we all know it's silly to not prepare, just walking forward and getting slammed or surprised by things that, you know, should really not be that surprising. And as far as the lack of preparation, we call some of the consequences the Ds. So that could be higher costs due to deferred maintenance. That could be the requirement for a special assessment that could cause disruption of finances. That could be declining property values, owner distrust of the board or manager, causing political disruption, general discouragement and disappointment among owners, and of course, the danger of litigation.
Matt, let me follow up on that and tell our audience that this is what we see from our point of view. Well, let's imagine a $250,000 roof project that happens every 15 years. If you want to spend the least amount of money, you set reserve funds aside over those 15 years. And let's say you do that and collect just about 1% interest. The owners, in this case, only pay about $232,000 of that $250,000 roof. And that's because the bank contributes their portion with interest earned. And if you wait until the last minute and special assess, it's going to cost the owners about $250,000 to pay for that $250,000 roof. But at today's current market rates, a $250,000 7-year loan is going to cost the owners about $320,000 because of the interest you're now paying to the bank. In other words, the board's failure to navigate their way to the future, applying the plan to make reserve funding obligations along the way, that cost the homeowners $88,000 that they didn't need to pay. And that's a big price to pay. And I do want to remind you that a special assessment isn't a good solution. It's disruptive, it's unexpected, it's unfair. And remember, Matt said earlier, a board's job is to protect, preserve, and enhance the association's assets, both the physical and financial ones. Well, remember, a special assessment generally takes time, and it relies on an owner vote of approval. It's not a sure thing. And it makes the board look like they're not doing a good job. And of course, real estate agents in the neighborhood learn and know that this is an association with an undesirable reputation for special assessments.
So let me chime in on loans. Robert said that they're expensive, but that's not all. Really a loan, it requires that the association qualifies. So it's uncertain. Even if you qualify, it does take time to go through that process. So it's not necessarily a quick process, and you don't fix a leaky roof with loan proceeds. So once you already have the emergency, it's really too late. And once you do get that loan, the banker will get involved with your association to provide that guidance and make sure that you have sufficient cash so that you're able to pay back that loan. And of course, that loan is going to have to be baked into the monthly assessments for those loan payments. So likely the exact solution you should have done prior to that. And from a management company's point of view, loans make administering the association more complicated, and they also complicate sales and closings. So like another cartoon that I'd showed you before, your association is really a product of your choices. And I know that there's portfolio managers in the audience that know one or more associations like Aspen Creek Condos, and maybe some of you board members and homeowners have had the challenge of living in an association like this as well. So how do we prepare? Knowing the challenges of upcoming expenses, what do the steps look like to prepare? So it's pretty simple, really. You want to make sure that you fund your reserves as needed. You want to make sure that you're spending reserves on caring for the property, not letting it deteriorate, getting the deferred maintenance and the replacements done in a timely fashion. Of course, updating your reserve study regularly to make sure that you have the best, most up-to-date data and planning information, and seeking counsel and listening to your advisors, just like the flight crews listen to the control tower. Now, how do we prepare? Good question. Why? Well, the mountains are coming, deterioration is real, and you may feel, I'm an accountant myself, so you may want to think of it in terms of depreciation, really. So it's depreciating, and as these items are depreciating, they really need to be replenished. It's an expense that needs to be offset on an ongoing basis, just like any other bill of the association that the association needs to pay. And the offset to offset that very real expense, you want to pay the ongoing deterioration bill and spread it out over a number of years as part of the ongoing budget, right? So you want to build the care for the property and maintaining the property values and making sure that your community is well maintained. That needs to be built in right into the monthly assessments on an ongoing basis. So that makes me think about, I happen to work out at LA Fitness in Sarasota, Florida, and I don't have to worry about a special assessment. I know that they're going to maintain the building, they're going to maintain the equipment. If they need to resurface the pool, they have it built right into the model as far as part of the membership fees, they're collecting a portion to be able to maintain the facility. And that's really how it should be.
Yeah, that's Matt, that's pretty much the way the world works. When I travel, I get out of the airplane, jump right into a rental car. I never worry about the rental car company asking me to buy new tires or get an oil change when I return the car. They build those costs right into the daily rental fee. And the same for the hotel. They build the cost for the carpeting, the roofing, the painting, the major mechanicals. They build those into the daily fee. And I want to encourage you to think along those lines. When you build the costs into the monthly assessments and the funds are there when you need them, then projects get done on time and the curb appeal is maximized. And we did a study a number of years ago about condo home values compared to reserve fund strength, wondering if there was any correlation. It was very interesting. I thought there might be like a 5% correlation, but it was very interesting to see that it was a big deal. We measured it and it was 12.6% that the reflection of home values in the sale price where the association was well funded. And that just tells us curb appeal is real. The associations that do the right thing and set the funds aside so they're ready to be spent on reserve projects, they command higher property values and thousands of dollars in higher property values, more than enough to make up for the higher ongoing monthly assessments. And with that, let me start to summarize our time together and bring this program to a close. So, on the topic of funding reserves and what happens when you don't, what is the takeaway we'd like you to have today? Well, it's really pretty simple. As a board member, we'd like you to appreciate that you're in the cockpit. You can't see everything, but you are the flight crew. You're responsible for flying the plane. The mountains are ahead, and every association has its own set of mountains. Air traffic control knows how high they are. They know where they are. You're reckless if you're not gripping the controls tight and getting regular updates from air traffic control. If you're in the back seat in this, if you're back in 23A and coach, relaxing, reading a book, taking a nap, watching a movie, at best, everyone on board that aircraft is going to suffer a bumpy or dangerous flight.
So I want you all to remember that this is a multi-year journey for associations, that those mountains are scattered out. You don't have to face them all at once. And most associations have the speed and time to prepare in advance if they choose to do so. So we always encourage our board members to listen to their managers, reach out for help with your professionals. If you are a manager, please be that voice of experience to your boards. Definitely lean on your reserve study professionals who know the terrain and have that long-term vision that we spoke about earlier to really help you arrive safely in your journey to the future. But it's the board that flies the plane. And remembering what Robert said at the beginning of this session, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I hope we've made the board members here today thirsty for change, thirsty for enough to act in the best interests of their communities. And again, if you have any questions on this material, please go ahead and write those questions in the Q&A, and we can discuss those momentarily. Also want to thank Robert again for allowing me to be a part of this program. And so I work with First Service Residential, and we're the leading manager of residential communities in North America. We manage over 1.7 million units across over 8,500 properties, and we administer client expenditures of over $8 billion per year. We really pride ourselves on providing our communities with the leverage and resources you would expect from a large company, while also maintaining that local market expertise. So if you're interested in professional management or want to learn more, please visit our website at fsresidential.com.
And Matt, kind of the same thing for our company. For those of you in need of reserve study assistance, someone helping you fly the plane, contact us directly through our website where we can get a reserve study proposal to your association. And you can also find some other helpful resources in our articles and other recorded webinar material. Or, of course, you can scroll to the bottom of any page and sign up for our email list so you'll be alerted to upcoming programs like this one. Or you can just go straight to YouTube and search for videos on reserve studies. You'll see, actually in a week, you'll see this one posted, and you could subscribe to our channel. So you'll see all the learning resources that we have available on so many leadership and financial related topics. And to give you one more piece of assistance to help you in the challenging budget process, we gave you a new tool a couple of years ago. It's our online reserve calculator. We call it UPlanet. It's almost like a flight simulator program where you can test all your what if ideas about your completed reserve study. What if the roof comes in more or less than expected? What if we contribute or set the funding plan less than you suggest? You can see if your association crashes and burns or if it flies safely over those mountains of expenses. And the great thing is UPlanet is free. It comes at no cost with all of our professionally prepared reserve studies. Or if you're a reader, you can order a copy of our desktop reference, Understanding Reserves, to help you remember basic reserve planning concepts. You can download Chapter 1 for free on our website. And if you like it, of course, order it directly from Amazon. And with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Paige, who will coordinate our Q&A time together. Paige.